Hey, everybody out there, welcome back to 91.8 The Fan. It is your favorite holiday themed host, the DJ Christmas, and I have with me a very special guest. Would you like to introduce yourself to all the listeners out there?
Hey everyone, this is Monty Oum from BoosterTeeth.com, and I'm the guy who does the Ruby stuff.
Very cool. And, not just the Ruby stuff. When you actually started at Rooster Teeth, you were, getting started on animating a lot of, key scenes in some of the not really the very beginning of Red versus Blue, but around season 6, season 7, you really got your hand in there.
Yeah, I did a tiny bit in season 7 because I arrived right at the end of the production of that. Season 8 was the one that really was took off when I joined. I did uh you know 3 major sequences and a few here or there, and then 9 and then 10. So yeah, definitely that has been my life for the last 2 years. Also a whole lot of fun and a great project to work on.
Yeah, my personal favorite that you've worked on is I think it's a lot of people's favorite is just Tex beating up the Reds and Blues.
Yeah, that was my favorite too. Honestly, even like one of the first ones. It still holds up really well.
Now, for something like that, how do you go about doing that? I mean, do you just start animating? Do you look at, examples? Do you have any sort of motion capture footage or examples or anything?
Well, the first and most important step is understanding the characters. So knowing the Reds and Blues. I mean, when I arrived in Austin, Texas, I'm hanging out with the guys of Red versus Blue, and I'm quizzing them about their characters, which some days they could very much care less about what they do, and I'd have very deep questions about what they do in a situation. They're like, I don't know, what do you think? But then you research the character, and I've been a fan of the show for years, and we knew this fight was coming up where Tex uh, reemerges, and Tex being the most combative character of them all. It's like now we actually get to show that side of her,
Yeah.
and I did a lot of research into and a lot of thought on what kind of fighter she would be. Lots of conversations with Bernie Burns, who that's his project. So, you know, go back and forth about what's an appropriate move, what's too much, you know what's just right. So first and foremost is understanding the character, and then after that, it really is just a bunch of work. I mean, they did buy a small motion capture set that I utilized within. It was honestly in a conference room, which is no bigger than one of our smaller offices here. I did a lot of the motion capture for that. Uh, a lot of really just it's. I mean, without going into the technical details of animation, it's just a lot of polish and a lot of reiteration that goes into it. And the
And,
product, a few months later, there it is.
yeah. And now, was it hard to do something like that, the text scene, as opposed to uh, the first animated scene that you really, went full force with, which was uh, the warthog fight with the meta, or not the meta, with Wash?
Yeah. I mean, that's there's just parts that are easier, parts that are harder. I mean, the hardest thing is really just figuring out what to do. And we had a lot of conversations, and that scene started off with Bernie saying, "I think a warthog should crash through the wall." And so lots of long nights and late weekends, uh, I'd stay over and I'd be like exploring the map, seeing how I could utilize it so it blended properly. And the sequence itself happens naturally. As you're building it, you're like, well, this thing is heading in this direction. I get to continue that move, you know. And within that frame, you're like, this, like, well, he got hit by here. What can I have him do next? And if I'm lucky, I could sneak a really good joke in there, like the 6 petals joke
Yeah.
that everyone got a kick out of. And make sure there's again character in there, like things that Wash would do, and things that Griff would do. Like there were some funny things he would do that was maybe too much and it would get cut, or even the slightest head motion that's in character was something I would make sure that I would try to keep. Uh, Easier than the text fight, not so much. Easier in the sense that there only had like 2 3 moving parts, a broken wall, a moving car, and a guy on the hood. Whereas the text one, it was like 1 versus 4 or 5. And I keep in my mind the inventory of like, all right, this guy went off camera to the left. What's he doing? These other 3 are off camera. Got to cut to them, show them talking somehow. Like, why are they not in camera? Who has she taken out? Like the logistics of a fight. Make sure it makes sense, and you actually give it some meaning and resonance so that it doesn't just seem like just fighting, especially when, you know, you have these really strong characters, and that's where stuff like she should absolutely punch Griffin the balls, 16 or so times, or however many she did back then, and it just became a running joke. And once you've got those ideas in place, it kind of makes itself. I mean, it's not to say that you're not working at it. It's definitely a lot of work, but it's like writing essentially. And once you've got one idea, something 10 ideas, and then and at that point you start cutting back on things because you have too many shots and it's taking too long.
Definitely. And, just from everything that I hear about how you operate, you seem to work in almost a fluid mechanical sort of sense of work. So it makes sense that, you would be on top of that stuff more than it seems like anyone.
Right. It's kind of many jobs. The jobs of a choreographer, the jobs of a director, the jobs of a cameraman, and the jobs of the actor, and a little bit of writing too. Bernie has often said that writing is often like everything you do is writing if it becomes relevant. So you're animating scene, you're writing character, even if you're writing them physically.
Definitely. And now, like you said, with, red versus blue, obviously that's not your project. So you need to consult, other people. But for Ruby, it's all you. You are the man in charge. You're the man to go to.
Right, right. And I'm feeling a little bit like Bernie Burns these days, where um, people are, and being the guy in charge means also leading people, which I mean, I've headed like portions of the project before, but never every portion of the project. Which that denotes I definitely need help. Even being a one man army, you can't be a one man legion. So you gotta, and eventually you find yourself doing less of what is natural to you and spreading that out among different parts. So especially like on the writing side, I have a lot of ideas, but I simply do not have the time to put pen to paper for 8 hours, 20 hours a day. So that goes to Miles and Kerry, who were the first other two people to join this project, and they're the ones handling the entirety of the writing. What I do is give them again the only most important thing to me is characters, which is the first thing which is honestly predates Ruby, predates many of the things I've worked on. I've always had a set of characters in mind, even if they didn't have names. I had ideas of behavior and a kind of story I wanted to tell, and also other animators that are working with me, modelers, designers who are helping flesh out the look of the world. So we've got a pretty nice little team here. Not an army, more like a very specialized SWAT team of great artists that are working on Ruby, and I have to like split myself off for every one of them and just and like guide a lot of different people. The difference being that for the actual show, which you would have this pretty crazy script versus the trailers, which actually I do almost the entirety of the animation of the trailers by myself, because it's more akin to how I work, and I'm like transitioning into the directorial role of this project by doing less work, honestly.
Right. And now, one of the things that I've heard mentioned a couple times about Ruby is that instead of being based off of a video game like Halo, it's actually very heavily anime influenced. And I've I've seen back and forth of Miles and Carrie saying, "Oh, this anime is for homework and that anime is for homework." What sort of series do you think are being most influential for this type of story?
Well, the first thing, like, it was several months ago where we're finishing up Red versus Blue season 10, and people would be watching things on the side of like on their third or fourth monitor,
Right.
and I'd be like, oh, I have this project coming up. It'd be really cool if instead of watching this, you could be doing research for anime. And now them being anime, they were anime fans previously, but not as much as I. So I said, it would really help you understand the project if you could watch this anime comparatively to the one I'm making. So like I would give them anime homework, and for everyone who isn't that much into anime, the easiest transition would be like Avatar: The Last Airbender, because
Absolutely.
it's a Western anime, if you could call it that, and it's some people go back and forth, and I think that's a very good transition, and they watched it. Miles had already seen it, and Terry watched it, and he really liked it. He's like, all right, Next up would be something more along the lines of, and there are many animes that do this, but a prominent example, which is not it's not that recent, but it's still really relevant, would be Soul Eater.
Hmm.
Not for the weapons that are used, but for more the staging of like a school environment, teams of people that work together. Which, if you're interested, I could actually go into like the setup, which and similarities in terms of like
Please
the
do.
type the type of story we're trying to tell. So, as far as as much as I can reveal about the story, this is actually something we've tried to mention as often on the podcast or whenever there's releases. Uh, the reason like stories like Soul Eater, and you could even compare, although it wasn't part of the homework because there's too many episodes, would be the Naruto's or any anime really where there's a high school like influence, where uh, like even like the Final Fantasy VIII's and the Harry Potters,
Right.
uh, these children go to a school, and this is me talking about Ruby right now. The four girls of Ruby are actually on a team together, and the team's name is Ruby, uh, and that's why the show is called Ruby. It's not about the character Ruby, spelled Ruby, which is the Red Riding Hood based influence character.
Hmm.
The show is about Team Ruby, the four characters that start with their names starting with RWBY. And so, Team Ruby goes to a very much Soul Eater, Harry Potter, Final Fantasy VIII-ish school that teaches them how to be hunters and huntresses for a greater purpose. There's a headmaster type character. I equate him to the third Hokage or the Dumbledore or the Shinigami teacher at Soul Eater. He's like the head of the school. He founded this school. He's in charge of the school. Wants to train these children for a coming battle. That means because it's a school, there's more than Team Ruby. I mean, even my first list, and it's grown since my first list, I had 20 teams,
Wow.
which is a lot of people. And so let me tell you a little more about the kind of the formula for how this came to be. And I believe in rules because I often believe that too much freedom is a bad thing, and if you're trying to tell a story within a set of rules, you then become even more creative because you force yourself outside of a box that you developed yourself. So rule number one, day one, when it came to deciding what Ruby was, I came up with the name Ruby because I've been very fond of a color scheme. You've seen it perhaps in my other work, and like the logo that starts off before Dead Fantasy. I like the colors red, white, and black. And sometimes often you can add a bit of a yellow accent there. So in like there was a night maybe perhaps I was like half asleep thinking of how I could match up the letters red, white, black, and have it spell something, and then that became the name Ruby. RWBY stands for red, white, black, yellow. And then taking a little further, I've for many years browsing art sites and also seeing things of like badass characters, interpretations of characters. Very much you see very often a Red Riding Hood looking character, and I'm like, I had this idea for a long time ago. In fact, it was actually originally planned. This is. I've told no one else this. The sniper site was actually planned for an episode of Dead Fantasy,
Wow.
where a certain character would show up, another character would show up, and their weapons would join, and they would and they would fight with the sniper sight. And I'm like, why? You know what? That episode of Death Fantasy seems a little far off. Let me use this idea now. And I mean, I've always had this notion of weaponry used unconventionally, inspired like by things of our generation, like movies like that have the gun kata, aka Equilibrium, and many animes that have inspired off that. And I'm like, let me take this a step further. And I kind of did that in Haloid when I had shotgun kata, where the Halo character was like whipping around the shotgun and pumping it in various methods that was unconventional to a shotgun. And I'm like, let me take this even further. And I actually formulated the idea of the sniper sight over maybe 4 or 5 years ago, along with many other things. And I'm like, you know what? Scythes are actually very appropriate for Red Riding Hood characters because scythes, in a way, denote like a crescent moon. And if you're talking Red Riding Hood inspiration, you're also talking wolves. So that's what the kickoff that's essentially the pitch that I made to Bernie. I said, Bernie, I've got an idea for a weapon. It's a giant, like one of those 50 cal sniper rifles with a sight blade, and the kick when she fires it pulls it through the object. He thought that was brilliant.
Yeah,
And it, and
that's definitely one of my favorite things about, you know, the combined aspect of both trailers. I mean, Weiss's rapier is great, but there's something that really appeals to me about the Crescent Rose where it's just constant fluid motion. And you
yeah,
mentioned it when you talked about it on the podcast a few months ago. It's never a wasted motion. If you're swinging the scythe, you're reloading the rifle. If you're shooting the rifle, it powers the scythe.
yep, that's a big inspiration for me, and I have many more in mind that utilize like a perpetual kind of motion thing. It's actually and the thing is, and it's very unique to my process. We do have other modelers on the team, but I absolutely have to build the important weapons because it motivates some of the characters. Um, there's a there's a very there's a line I'm actually trying to work into the script right now that has to do with the fact that Ruby as a character fights with one of the most dangerous combination weapons ever because not only does it have this enormous amount of kick, but the danger end of that weapon is pointed directly at her. It has a lot of motivation within her character to bring, as essentially the main protagonist of our show, she fights enemies by bringing them closer to her. And that theme actually will be relevant to her character as the main character of the show. It really worked out well for me in a way that it's like the same way Naruto is called Naruto because it's about Naruto, but
Right.
but Ruby is about Ruby, but it's also about Team Ruby. So just like Harry Potter, it's about Harry Potter, but everyone else in the cast also makes it very important. So Bernie really liked that idea. He also felt like after 3 seasons of RVB, it was about time like why not? And we've had many discussions. Why not? I do something that's more to my flavor, anyways. Like you said, I kind of fit myself into the mold of RVB, and so to kind of broaden into a scope that I'm naturally accustomed to was something he felt was a good time for.
Definitely. And you've cited stuff like Soul Eater and other animes. What are some of the other series that you've told Miles and Carrie you absolutely need to watch this, if for no other reason than to help pull ideas for script?
Well, the thing is, I very often try not to cite anime because the 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 low end response to that is then he's obviously pulling from it. To cite it and pull it's obviously two different things.
Right.
But but I mean the thing is I like so many animes and there are so many different scopes with the scopes of animes which is what I love about the genre. And I'm trying to get them to watch more, but only so many hours in the day. And their job, unlike mine, where if they're writing, they can't be listening to other people's work at the same time. But there are themes in other animes I'd like to keep, like in terms of like prevalent themes that are consistent throughout so many different types of storytelling that some animes do well. Like Soul Eater is a very relevant anime for aesthetic and the teams and the students and the school aspect. But some of my favorite animes are completely on the opposite spectrum. Like one I would love for them to watch and I've constantly grilled them on is like you have to watch Ghost in the Shell standalone complex. For the philosophical side of things, the type of story I want to tell has a great deal of philosophy. Um, I got them to watch Samurai Champloo for the style aspect of it, and they loved it. And it's only a lack of hours in the day that honestly limits the amount of anime they watch. I mean, there's even stuff that's really relevant in one of my favorite series of all time. It isn't considered an anime at all. Is Batman Beyond? And they have themes in some of the enemies that I think will be that are great and the character and essentially, I mean, and Batman himself. Uh, God, there's so many to list. We watch Fairy Tale has a lot of similarities as well. There's
Hmm.
no school aspect, but there's definitely a league aspect and a team aspect. And then eventually, once you start watching a crap ton of animes, like and you begin to see the recurring things. I've actually compared to I compare to the Harry Potter and Naruto as the this high school. Naruto the ninja high school, Harry Potter being the wizard high school, Soul Eater being the death god high school. I also lucked out. Carrie is a big Final Fantasy VIII fan, which is one of my all-time favorite Final Fantasies. And they do so many things in their world, and they're the soldier high school, essentially. And I actually akin some of the ideas of, I mean, I love making Death Fantasy, and some of the ideas of what I put into Death Fantasy is what I wish I'd gotten out of many of their stories. And so Now some of the things that we're going to translate into Dead Fantasy are now going to translate into Ruby because the archetypes are essentially similar, and you can tell the same story with its own aesthetic and some level of a level of freedom of design, and you can also make money off of it because it's not owned by Square
Exactly.
Enix.
That's one of the big things is, not being Square Enix means that you can monetize.
Yep, absolutely. Anything short of Square Enix and Tecmo themselves hiring me to make Dead Fantasy, it's very difficult for me to make Dead Fantasy because Dead Fantasy is a project that has both propelled and competed with my existence. It's gotten me to where I am by making it, and also I'm very grateful for the fact it's gotten me to meet a great amount of people. A great deal of my closest friends these days I've met through cons, and who have like I've shared the same level of taste for my work, and then they realize I'm just the guy who likes the same things they do. We meet as, oh my god, you're the guy who made this, and then we go out to lunch or have coffee together, and even like it still continues to this day. It's just like I love everyone I meet via my projects, and I can't wait to bring this project out and have even more people enjoy the things I want to show them. But Dead Fantasy has also competed with my life in that I only had time to do it on my spare time. I mean, in fact, I would get jobs because Dead Fantasy was essentially a resume, and I would get jobs at game companies who wanted my feel and look for action, and I would do it on the side. And honestly, it would compete because I'd want to deliver Dead Fantasy, but I have to put in the hours to work. And it isn't pretty when the product you deliver yourself is better than the product, or is received more received well compared to the product you're being paid to do. So this is kind of the best of both worlds here at Rooster Teeth, honestly, which is bar none the best job in the world compared to any game job or any job in general. If you're a creative, Rooster Teeth is the best place to be. And to work for a guy like Bernie Burns, who's probably the most understanding, adaptive, objective person I've ever met, is a great thing. Because I mean, when I joined this company 4 years ago, I would have never thought this company would have been okay with making an anime. And he's evaluated the audience. He's seen what I can do, and he understands the shift in pace of the people on the internet and the people we're looking to entertain. And he's very excited about the future that this IP will bring to the company as just a small division of the many like the library of things we're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, Rooster Teeth is above all about the community, and if this appeals to a part of the community that has really been looking for a more anime side as opposed to something that's more than just red versus blue, that's more than just, achievement hunter and let's plays, this is something for them.
Yep, absolutely. And we're very happy to deliver it to people. That's one of our greatest prides, being able to make people happy.
And now, one of my other favorite things about the trailers is the music. Obviously, Jeff Williams is a composing genius, but how does that whole back and forth process works? Do you come up with a rough idea and then send it to him, or do you animate the whole thing and then he?
Thus, thus far, it's been many of those cases simultaneously. For example, the Ruby trailer, immediately after we finished Red versus Blue season 10, I simply did not stop working. So about 2 weeks in, I had a very good rough cut for the Ruby trailer, and we were like, maybe we should show this at the New York Comic Con that was coming up that fall. So I brought it with me, but it was too early for them because after looking at it, it's like we should really polish and do some really great music to this. Also, the editing needed some polish, some tightening, and and then with the finish with the upcoming date of the final episode of RVB10, Jeff had the brilliant idea of tagging it at the end of the credits and showing this new IP, which was brilliant. And so it gave us enough time for him to polish it up. So for the Ruby trailer, the music the edit was mostly done, and he had something to edit to in terms of the timing. And then he would get a version back to me that I'd actually re-edit to be closer to the beat of the music. And there was a tiny bit of back and forth at the end of the Ruby trailer, which worked out brilliantly. The Weiss trailer was like anticipating how well the Ruby trailer worked. It's like, let's get this on the front end and like make this musically inspired, which is what inspired. And this is the stuff that happens on its own. You can't make this stuff up. Is well, if we want to make this trailer musically inspired, let's make the character musical. That resulted in Weiss being the singer of the trailer, and so that was a lot more back and forth. And it's great that Jeff and I have a very good relationship. I actually flew up to the Northeast, to Massachusetts, where he lived, and we sat at a restaurant for about 8 or 9 hours, just talking about what the trailer could be, googling everything we could, and referencing, and me breaking down a great deal of the plot, talking to him and his daughter, who's the one who does the singing,
Mhm.
and a lot of back and forth. And I mean, if you've actually watched a lot of my work in the past, the Dead Fantasies and Haloid, they're actually very musically driven. If you turn off the sound effects, it's actually essentially it's almost like an action music video. And so I wanted to do that here, and it worked out really well. There's a lot that goes to the beat, and we hit that moving target really well, especially for the timing we had, and we're very proud of it, which is great because now we just keep setting a higher bar, and the beat trailer is coming up, and I'm about to jump in a conversation with Jeff Williams right now and actually give him the lowdown on this character, which is one of the things he's very interested in. He invests. It's good because Jeff Williams invests himself into the character, and he's already very excited. He sees that his daughter, who just entered high school, goes to school, and her friends who are that age of girls who are interested in this sort of thing, they actually ask her for info about the project, and he finds endearing and tremendously exciting. So it makes him very excited about the project.
Yeah, I mean, the music in and of itself is just great to sit down and listen to. The I mean, just Red Like Roses is good if you want simple music, whereas Mirror Mirror is more of a full song. You get more of a full song effect. And
Yep,
when both trailers came out, I don't even use iTunes. I downloaded iTunes just to buy those songs.
that's great. That's great.
And obviously, you dropped it in the white trailer that the first episode will be premiering July 4th weekend at RTX. Do you have any sort of time schedule for the black and yellow trailers? Are they going to come out just when they're finished, or do you have them on a set
Well,
time schedule?
considering that RTX is coming pretty soon, if we space them evenly for the sake of that, just kind of making sense that they should be evenly between. But the Ruby trailer, the red trailer was an exception because I did it when it was done, and it coincided with the end of RP10. White's trailer, B trailer, white trailer will be spaced evenly, and there's some time like evenly enough where there's some timing where we like to premiere with events. So there may be an event we're at where we'll have a panel and we'll show it in front of a live audience, so that's always fun. And uh, so in terms of timing, it'll definitely be less. It'll definitely be less than it took between the red and the white trailer. So absolutely sooner than we think, honestly, which I'm sure will make everyone happy.
Now, I you say events. The first thing that jumps out to mind would be something like PAX East. Do you think that there's a possibility that people going to PAX East would be able to see it there?
I didn't say anything.
Okay, well, but you did not say anything.
I did not say anything, but I didn't say anything.
All right, so we're not going to get any information out of you on that front, but is there any places where fans can keep up to date with any sort of thing that, you're just going through and a thought pops into your head and you want to let everyone know? Is there places
Well,
where people can keep up to date with you?
oddly, definitely my Twitter, which is, I mean, I'm new to it because I only just got a smartphone about last fall, and well, that certainly has made my life easier. I mean, it only because random thoughts pop into me, and if maybe you could actually dissect what I say, and it has meaning towards plot things, which are just happen to be on my mind when I'm as I'm falling asleep, waking up, or very often maybe or some very often maybe I'll do something very intentionally because I'm like, well, this is a very good avenue where people can just process 140 characters and maybe a picture and just be like, well, that looks like something. I don't know what to make of it, but just if you just follow me on Twitter, which is just Monty Oum on Twitter, on many of my other usernames, uh, maybe you'll see every now and then a screenshot of something or a wireframe or the corner of a concept every now and then, and or perhaps me tweeting at Miles and Carrie on certain plot things that they should be thinking about, even though it's coded in a way that's just language between the three of us. And if you're used to us, then maybe you'd know.
Yeah, or sometimes it's something silly like you yelling at Miles to watch Gurren Lagann
Yeah,
because he's a terrible person.
yeah, that does make him a terrible person. Actually, he's quite horrible. Although, just equally, Carrie has yet to watch Cowboy Bebop. So I've got one guy in the who has yet to watch one thing on
I
one
I
end of the
can't
spectrum.
tell which is worse. It's
Yeah, the,
uh,
the 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 true answer is they're both evil. So
it's true.
yeah, so I'll have to give them both a smacking. Um, Chances are they'll listen to this and they'll wake up and you'll give them that revelation that it's really their fault.
Yeah, but I've ever since I learned that you had a Twitter, I've been following it, and it's it's great to see the aspect side because immediately my first thought after the white trail is what's the name of the sword? What is this rapier called? And then you've got the concept art and the name, and it's right there. And then there's a picture of Ray's head on Metal Gear Ray, and there's a there's always that.
only only because I just happened to pull up that Let's Play, and I am a big fan of Achievement Hunter. All the guys. Yes, the Weiss's sword, which is called Mutant Master, and I try to put as much depth and at least even if it's shallow depth, oddly, into the names and like I said, the color rule. Oh, if I mentioned that, um, everything has to have some sort of motivation. I think I was actually going that way with the conversation much earlier on. There's a rule that we live with in the bound of this show. Um, so Team Ruby is consistent of red, white, black, yellow as the color rule of the team. But you know that Ruby's name is Ruby, the White's name is Weiss, and there's a B character and a Y character, and there are 20 teams plus at this point. The rule, which came in day one, was if there's anyone in this world past a certain era, there's this trend in my world. If you've seen the world map, that this in this original world, everyone's name has to either be a color, be something that is a color, or be something that makes you think of a color. I.e., rubies are red, and white is German for white. So we can delve into other languages if we'd like. The rule is kind of flexible, but still very binding because very often I'll say like, okay, guys, I have this character in mind, and the name begins with an M, but I don't know what the other three letters are for their team. And Carrie would come up with a dumb name that honestly it should be a joke but isn't, and you'll see down the line. And so that's rule number one, rule, which is going to motivate everything art wise about the show. Rule number two is like I mentioned, everyone who goes to school is on a team. That team has to with the first letter of the four characters' name, spell something that is a color, is something that is that color, or something that makes you think of that color. So the RWBY of the team members in Ruby spelled Ruby itself, which rubies are red. So there may be another team that shows up and their amalgamation of names spells some bizarre four-letter version of that color. There were many hours and hours sitting in cafes or just beating my head over thesauruses and Wikipedia trying to figure out this and how it aligns with a third rule, which is the thing you touched on, is every character, if it can be, every character should be inspired off of some legendary folktale, mythology, fairy tale character, anything we can draw from. Because if you're familiar with anime, honestly, anime gets to do whatever it wants.
Right.
In Solia, for example, you have a character named Stein who's obviously referenced Frankenstein, but not Frankenstein the doctor, Frankenstein the monster, but he's wearing a lab coat. And at that point, they don't care. You're just in it for the shallow reference. And he fights a character named Medusa, but she doesn't have snakes for hair. She fights with arrow snakes. And it's like that's the beauty of anime. You can take even a shallow reference and give it its own depth because of inspiration. So right now, this show works on a tremendous amount of inspiration in so many directions that some of it we don't even see coming, and it works out on its own. I can say, for example, a little secret about the Beat trailer that's coming out. There might be more than one character in it, and he had this bizarre serendipitous thing that happened that I didn't even expect to happen. I gave him a name. Miles and Carrie did the research, and they're like, "Did you know you named him this for this reason?" And I'm like, "Sure," which is absolutely untrue. And bam, the story writes itself.
You've got
Which
your
is great.
rules so well set that your subconscious just sort of makes it all work.
I'm beginning to think that.
Well, I'm definitely excited for the black trailer, which may or may not show up at PAX East. Who knows? We'll find out. But it's definitely something that I, for one, and I know a lot of our fans, since we focus more on anime heavy stuff, we're all really looking forward to it. Everyone that I've shown it to, they think that it looks fantastic, and
Okay.
it's it's just exciting. I can't
It's very
describe
exciting.
it any other way than exciting.
Yes, it's very exciting. My only apology would be how slow we're making it, and I wish I could give it to you sooner. It would be like it would be great to have this in your hands already, and having people like from the cast of like so many people picking and choosing who their favorites. Because right now we have this giant board with all this concept art of different characters, and everyone in the studio comes back and says, "I like that guy. Oh man, she's cool. Oh, I like her." And it's like I can't wait for that to hit the world, and it's gonna be
In the
great.
meantime, it's like I like the red one. I like the white one. Yeah.
Yeah, they're already only arguing about those two, and we've got four out of so many more coming.
Well, that definitely gives the fans a lot to look forward to. I mean, for somebody who's just looking at, the red trailer, you see, oh, look, there's going to be four of them. It's just about these four. But this is a massive scale kind of thing that I'm 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 speechless. Apparently,
It's been a long time. I've been wanting to tell a story in a world that I can control, that I have inspiration off the things, images I want to do. And a little tidbit, and it's never been mentioned, but in season 9, I drew up a world map because I wanted to understand a, that same geographical rule I've stated before, where if I have the geography of the world, I can play out the sequence influenced by the continents. I mean, I did that because when we were doing season 9, Halo Reach had come out, and I was looking at the Reach limited edition art book, and they made a world. And I was like, that's a smart thing. It should be influencing you. And so, uh, always in the back of my mind, the root of everything comes from like the barest essentials of what it should be. Where they live, the geography of what it influences, and it's like that didn't get to happen in Red Rouge Blue season 9. But since it's such a prominent thing, and especially with the world that can have more control over, we can definitely do that for Ruby.
well, you use the word drew, but you and I both know that you're using that word a little bit loosely because the world
That's,
map was based off of a ketchup stain on a napkin.
that's right. It's framed at my desk currently, but right, a late night at IHOP, a late night excursion at IHOP, and we had generated the first quote unquote art for the show, which was a ketchup smeared into a napkin.
Which sometimes the best way to create a world map is to just go with something completely random and freeform and then just make it work.
Right. And that's actually one of the recurring themes of our show is the randomness of nature that somehow in the end culminates in something that somehow makes sense and works.
Definitely. Well, I think that the fans, myself included, have learned a lot of juicy info and a lot of
Uh,
titillating
it's
uh,
very difficult. It's very
taunts.
difficult. It's very difficult to tease at this level and not want to and be wanting to reveal more. But I'll let the product speak for itself.
Definitely. And as we mentioned before, that product will indeed speak for itself in the next two
Mhm.
trailers, which will be out definitely before the 4th of July this coming year, where it will premiere at RTX.
That's right.
And now, before we let you go, we do have one final question to ask of you. Would you be willing to participate in our 91.8 The Fan tradition?
What is that?
It's very simple. We just ask you to say a quick radio bump for us.
Absolutely.
All right, cool. You just say, hello, my name is.
Hello.
You insert your
Okay.
name. Not right now.
Right. Gotcha.
Hello, my name is. You insert your name. I do this. You can say that you're the animation head at Rooster Teeth, the creator of Ruby, whatever you want to put there. You've got creative freedom. And
Right.
you're tuned into 91.8 The Fan.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. Hello, my name is Monty Oum. I am the director of animation at roosterteeth.com and head of the new anime show Ruby. Uh, and you are listening to 91 point, oh geez, 91.8 or 99.18.
91.8 The Fan.
Okay, let me do that again.
All right.
Hello, this is okay. Hello, this is Monty Oum, and You're listening. Oh, hello, this is Monty Oum. I am the director of animation at roosterteeth.com and head of the new project Ruby. And you are listening to 98.1 The Fan.
Almost 91.8 the fan.
Oh my God. I'm looking right at the letters. Okay, here we go. One more time. Hello, my name is Monty Oum. I am the director of animation at roosterteeth.com and lead on the new project Ruby. And you are listening to 91.8 The Fan.
There you go. Third time's a charm. Well done.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to talk about Ruby. I know that it's a little tough for you because you can only say so much when you want to say even more.
Right, right. It's yeah, but like I said, you will see coming soon.
Definitely. And for all the listeners out there, make sure you keep it tuned to 91.8 The Fan because we've got everything you want and nothing you don't.